The tension keeps mounting over Guyana's delayed election results. The foreign minister threatens to bar international observers. Venezuelan opposition lawmaker Juan Guaidó is accused of staging an attempt to kill him. And South Africa confirms its first case of coronavirus, a man who had traveled to Italy. Hello and welcome to Telesur. I'm Carla González in Quito, and this is from the South, and we begin with news from Guyana. And tension is mounting by the hour at Guyana's Electoral Commission as the country awaits the results of Monday's general election. There have been angry exchanges outside the election offices this morning after the final verification of votes was halted overnight. The foreign minister told diplomats she might withdraw the credentials from international observers over criticisms they have made. Several ambassadors said they would stay to protect the ballot papers. So let's go live to Georgetown for the latest with our correspondent, Alejandro Kirk. Let's see if he can hear us. Hello, Alejandro. So,
Carla, it's been a hectic day here in Georgetown. The Electoral Commission did not. The Electoral Commission stopped counting the vote last night around midnight, and ever since there has been a lot of comes and goes from all parties. At night, the counting stopped because one official said he was exhausted and went over to another room and began working with a computer and other people in putting data into it. It was discovered by the party observers, by the international observers, and the process stopped there. And just a few minutes ago, Jason Carter from the Carter Center told us that the process had resumed just a while ago in the middle of all these denunciations that we have been hearing, and based on which we can say now with some propriety that there has been an effort, a sustained effort to rig this election on the part of the APNU, the ruling coalition. Why I'm saying this? Because of what happened yesterday when some spreadsheets were introduced into the process without verification, the episode in the night with the police involved. This morning, the foreign minister of Guyana came to this GECOM, summoned the international observers and diplomats and threatened them to withdraw their accreditations because she thought that they were interfering with the internal affairs of Guyana. This was flatly rejected by all of them. All observers are committed, they have said, to follow this process up to the very end. After that meeting finished, the police commissioner came over to the delegates and the observers and declared that there was a bomb scare and that everybody should leave the building. Nobody did. The observers and the ambassadors, including the US, UK and Canada, are determined to stay there until the process is done. So the good news is that after all this pressure and denunciations by the PPP, by the People's Progressive Party, which, by the way, has published the entire poll statements for the region, which are about 800, to prove that they have won the election, which has been contested by the government, and to make this process clean and transparent. So After all this pressure, the work, we just were told by Jason Carter, the work resumed, and it is expected that the 800 poll stations will be checked upon, and a result will be delivered by this evening. But we were told that before, since Monday, and nothing had happened. And well, we are now on Thursday. The country doesn't know who the next president will be, who won the elections. Region 4 is the decisive area where all things are decided here. According to the PPP, they have an advantage of around 18,000 votes over the APNU, the ruling coalition. But in the meanwhile, after the announcement of Security Minister Kemrai Ranjatan that the APNU had won the elections, some people are gathering here around government supporters in order to defend their victory or complain if they come out defeated. In a note of rather pintoresque, this Minister of State Security accused the Russians to be interfering technologically.
Yes, we were listening to our correspondent Alejandro Kirk. He's in Guyana. He's giving us a very extensive update on what's happening over there, and we're still waiting, as all Guyanese are waiting for the final results. So now let's continue with Guyana. Earlier, the opposition leader Barack Jagdeo explained that his party had all the official election results, and they showed that the PPPC has won.
Here and obscenely threatened the international observers to withdraw their accreditation. Now, simultaneously, Ramjatan and Katiyus have declared victory for APNU, contrary to the MOU that was signed by Mr. Granger and all the other political parties, that GCOM shall make the final declarations, and GCOM would be the only authority that will make declarations. We have been very restrained by respecting that. So let me just say to you, I'm going to share with you a website. We have not declared the results, but we are forced to, a few minutes ago, upload all the statements of poll for Region 4. So the first thing, these are public documents, and the Guyanese public will see, and they'll be able themselves to tabulate the results for Region 4. Because in here, we're stuck. We can't move forward with that process. Not stuck because of administrative problems, but because there's a plot between some officials of GCOM and the Congress place to delay the results of the Region 4. They want to get rid of the international observers and then declare a victory and illegally swear in Granger. Yesterday, he was making preparations to be sworn in. So we have uploaded. I'll give you the link in a moment. We did our tabulations on the basis of the statements of poll that we uploaded. These are all signed by presiding officers. In those, the PPP got 80,000 votes for Region 4, up from 70,000 in the past elections. APNU got 114,000 votes, up by 1,000 from the past elections. So APNU around 114,000, PPP 80,000. Now, you'd recall that the lead, when you had the declared results for the 9 other regions, that the PPP was in the lead by over 52,000 votes. So when you subtract the lead in Region 4, the PPP is ahead in the overall results by 18,000 votes. By 18,000 votes. And Guyana, the whole country now, doesn't have to wait on this process. They themselves can start adding up the public documents, the statements of poll. So that was one of the reasons. Now, let me tell you how obscene this was. There's a list. Mr. Lowenfield said it was an error, that the spreadsheet that came before the observers and the party agents to use as a means of verification rather than the statement of poll, that's far, very far from the truth. Mr. Lowenfield should be ashamed to say that was an error, because there was a pattern. We revealed it. We showed that in every box, 23 boxes were gone through. And in 17 of them, 17 of the 23, there was an adjustment upwards for APNU between 50 to 100 votes in every box, with no adjustment for the PPP. The night prior to that, when we were using the statements of poll, they had gone through 310 boxes in Georgetown, and there was no variance using the statements of poll. But suddenly when the spreadsheet appeared, out of 23 boxes, 17 had variances, and over 50 to 100 votes in each case for APNU. So please, let me finish. So that was an attempt to rig the elections. I think when that failed yesterday, they panicked. And so last night, although they promised to go through continuously, Mr. Lowenfield, in the presence of the U.S. ambassador, all the ambassadors rather, in the presence of the international observers, said, we will go through the entire night. Then suddenly, they stopped the exercise again. There was an incident here last night where a guy took a laptop, and with flash drive, we believe they were sharing information with Congress Place again. And then when all else failed this morning, they sent Karen come in to send away the international community because they want them to disappear. But I've had assurances from the entire observer group that they're not moving. So we know that this is what you see unfolding before us, a pattern to rig the elections. But this is not going to stand. They will not succeed. And Granger talks about decency. You know, he should be ashamed of himself to put our country in this state in front of the entire world now. You have reporters from all around the world here. You have the international community here in the form of observers. You have the ambassadors and the others. They got so desperate, they called in a bomb scare. But nobody moved, including the ambassadors and the foreign representatives, because they know what's going on. And the chair of GCOM, bears no responsibility. Mr. Lowenfield has failed on every single promise he made. And we believe it's part of a pattern. And rather than sit upstairs, the chair has to come down now and sort this out. This is an embarrassment to our country.
That was the leader of the opposition in Guyana, Jared Pactel. And after the break, another accusation of vote buying against Colombia's president. So don't go away.
Innovation, science, the technological breakthrough, and its influence in society.
Viajeros del saber, el futuro está aquí.
Atomen. Monday, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. More news at this hour. The president of the National Constituent Assembly in Venezuela, Diosdado Cabello, who hosts a popular Wednesday night program, Con el Mazo Dando, took to the show to dismantle a stunt by the Venezuelan opposition in which Juan Guaidó alleged an attack on himself and his supporters at a rally last week.
A resident of Lara State has confessed to taking part in a false flag operation, which was orchestrated by the Venezuelan opposition on February 29th. It was on that day that Juan Guaidó and some of his entourage held a small march of reportedly 250 people in Barquisimeto.
My name is Clímaco Medina. On Friday the 28th of February, a motorcyclist came to me. When I went to look at him, I recognized him, who they called Chicho. and he told me that tomorrow Guaidó will be coming and they were looking for a motorcyclist to do a job. So I said, well, yes. So he told me that I need to be in La Gallera, La Paz, at 10 in the morning.
Guaido's team had publicized a video showing one of their white SUVs covered in bullet holes. They reported that a black-clad man with his face covered and on a motorcycle had pulled out a gun and threatened the group of opposition leaders and supporters.
He took out a revolver and gave it to me. He told me that I had to point it at the people and intimidate them and aim at Guaidó.
Meanwhile, news spread that a young man at the opposition rally was shot and sent to hospital. What was dubbed an attack and an attempt on Guaido's life was denounced by both national media and opposition backers in the United States. The Associated Press published a photo of the man who Guaidó claimed threatened him. But AP themselves said that they were not present at the rally and that the photo was provided to the Associated Press by the opposition figure's team. The supposed assailant in black was labeled a Colectivo member and a socialist hardliner. The man in black was arrested by intelligence agents. Alias El Caracas gave an account that the entire episode had been planned and that he had been paid to stage an assault on the crowd.
He took out $200, gave it to me, and he said that when I finished the job, he was going to give me $200 more. Around Calle 10, between Calle 10 and 12, I took out the gun, pointed it at the people. The people began to shout, run in different directions. I continued walking, pointing at Guaidó. They began taking photos, and I returned.
The confession was revealed on the Wednesday night program hosted by President of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, Diosdado Cabello.
The Bolivarian National Guard of Venezuela in Carabobo has managed to stop a number of weapons from entering the country. The discovery took place at the international airport of Valencia on a flight from Bogotá, Colombia. The weapons seized include AK-47 rifles and ammunition. In Colombia, new evidence of vote buying by President Iván Duque have emerged during the wiretapping of a drug trafficker. Now deceased drug trafficker José Guillermo Hernández, alias Ñeñe, was wiretapped at the request of the Prosecutor General's office for a murder case. Coincidentally, a phone call was also recorded where Ñeñe revealed that he stole money that was meant for buying votes in the Caribbean region for Germán Vargas Lleras in the first round, and apparently used this to buy them for Duque in the second round. Ñeñe, who was killed in May 2019 in Brazil, was one of Duque's main guests at his inauguration ceremony in August 2018. Peru's Javier Pérez de Cuellar, the only Latin American to become head of the United Nations, has died at the age of 100. Pérez de Cuellar served 2 terms as UN Secretary General between 1982 and 1991. During that time, he helped set up the Contadora Group to promote peace talks in Central America and accompany the final peace deal with the FMLN in El Salvador. He later stood for the presidency of Peru, but lost to Alberto Fujimori. Coming up, could Elizabeth Warren drop out of the race to become the Democrat presidential candidate in the United States? More details when we come back.
A review of the world news that investigates, incites analysis, and induces criticism, because every event has a context.
Pusimos el punto en la I.
Dot in the eye. Saturdays, only on Telesur.
The Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is in Moscow for talks with Vladimir Putin on the conflict in Syria. Ahead of their meeting, Erdogan said he was hoping to agree on a rapid ceasefire in Idlib province, where more than 30 Turkish soldiers were killed in recent days, as Syrian government forces advanced to retake the area. The fighting in Idlib has threatened a direct conflict between Turkish and Russian forces, which both leaders are anxious to avoid.
I want to once again express condolence over the deaths of your military servicemen in Syria. We need to talk about everything, so that nothing like this happens again, and it does not destroy Russian-Turkish relations, which I know you also value.
The measures and appropriate decisions we will take here will calm the region and our two countries.
Our correspondent in Moscow, Lisandra Andres, has more on this meeting.
The Russian President Vladimir Putin has spoken about reaching a solution in the Syrian province of Idlib and preserving Russia's good relations with Turkey. He was speaking as he began talks with the Turkish leader Recep Tayyip Erdogan in the Kremlin. Putin expressed his condolences for the deaths of Turkish soldiers in Idlib, but he recalled that Syrian forces have also suffered a number of casualties in recent days. He said he hoped this meeting with President Erdogan could bring an end to the loss of life in Idlib. For his part, the Turkish president expressed his wish to maintain the good trade relations that the two countries enjoy, and said the entire world has its eyes on this important meeting and its outcome. After private talks between the two leaders, the delegations from the two countries are meeting to continue the negotiations. The Kremlin spokesperson said the Russian side hoped to agree a package of measures to put an end to the confrontation. The Kremlin also repeated its support for the territorial integrity of Syria and for its government's fight against terrorism, and it said it stood by the agreement reached with Turkey in Sochi, including Ankara's commitment to separate the terrorists from so-called moderate armed groups in Idlib.
That was Lisandra Andres from Moscow. A court in Scotland has put off until June 18th an extradition hearing for the former Catalan Education Minister Clara Ponsati. She is one of several Catalan leaders in exile who the Spanish authorities want to try for their part in the 2017 independence referendum.
If a politician in Scotland had allowed a referendum to take place to allow people to give their practical expression to their Article 10 rights, whatever the legality of that referendum, it is utterly inconceivable that they would be charged with levying of war against the sovereign or be charged with treason. In a true democracy, people do not get prosecuted for advocating political change by peaceful and constitutional means, nor can we allow Clara Ponsati to be extradited and prosecuted for doing the same thing in Spain. Today is a victory against Spain, who stand accused of abusing the rule of law, but we still have a long way to go. Thank you.
Now to the United States, where Senator Elizabeth Warren is set to drop out of the 2020 Democratic presidential primary following lackluster results on Super Tuesday, including being trounced in her home state. Warren was one of the first candidates to announce a presidential candidate for 2020, pitching herself as the middle ground among Democrats. Now the question is, who will Warren endorse, as the race for the Democratic nomination has come down to two men: Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders and former Vice President Joe Biden.
And people are afraid.
Now to coverage from the coronavirus. South Africa has its first confirmed case of the COVID-19 virus. He's a 38-year-old man who had traveled to Italy.
As you have heard already, honorable members, we have already confirmed the first case that has tested positive for the coronavirus or COVID-19 in South Africa, in KwaZulu-Natal. I was informed this morning, I've already briefed the President.
March 5th marks 7 years since the passing of the leader of the Bolivarian Revolution, former President Hugo Chavez Frias. Tributes are pouring in Venezuela and also in social media. The date is being commemorated by social organizations throughout Venezuela and the Bolivarian government, including a special program which we are looking at the historic 4F barracks. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, students of the St. Vincent Grammar School, Girls High School, Bishop's College, and other secondary schools are reading about Chavez to commemorate his passing. Students read Cuentos del Arañero in the first Spanish Reading Out Loud competition. And with that, we end our news brief. But you can find all of our stories by checking our website, telesurenglish.net. And remember, if you're watching from Africa, you can find us on Starsat Channel 461 in South Africa and Channel 539 in Nigeria. And be sure to also join us on social media. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.